Hello and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast. My name is Taylor, and today I'm joined by a guest who's built a reputation online for being the realistic runner. She lives in North Carolina, works as a social media director, and has ran 2 marathons and 3 half marathons over the last 2 years. I'm so excited to talk to her today, so without further ado, please welcome Mackenzie. Well, Mackenzie, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today. We just said it, but I realized way too late that you lived in North Carolina, so I'm excited to know somebody else that lives in
Yes.
the area for sure.
Oh yeah, we love North Carolina. It's the best state, in my humble opinion.
For sure, for sure. Well, cool. Well, I know you've got your sort of brand online, which I love about being a realistic runner. I'm excited to kind of hear about how you got into that world. But I figured maybe we'd start from the beginning before we get there about where you started as a runner. So how did you get into running in the first place?
So I did not grow up running. I played soccer for a few years and then got into swimming. I had always grown up swimming, so that was like always in the back of my mind, but then took it more seriously once I got to high school. So that was my form of activity. I hated
Hmm.
running just because it was always a punishment, or like we did it for dry land for swimming, and it was not.
Yeah.
And I also like was always so insecure how slow I was, and just like the way that I ran, like I just felt like I looked like a T-Rex trying to run, and I just
Yeah.
didn't really I didn't want that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and I also remember vividly, like I did ultimate frisbee too for like,
Mm, cool.
fun. And I remember there was like one time like one of the guys on the team was like, "You run weird." I'm like, "Thank
Oh,
you."
hate that. Hate that.
So that kind of just like seared in my brain for a really
Yeah,
long
for
time.
sure. For sure.
Um, and it wasn't until I got to college that it was, oh gosh. So went to college in 2019, and then pandemic happened. And pandemic, I mean, like for everyone, like everyone struggled in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. And that's when I really started to realize that I struggle with anxiety to a certain extent that I couldn't quite name when I
Yeah.
was younger. And when you're forced to just stay in one little area
There's
for
a lot of time to
a
think.
while, yeah, a lot of time to think. So you
Yeah.
just learn a lot about yourself. And one
Mhm.
of the things I
Mhm.
learned was that I had pretty bad anxiety. And that took form in like a lot of different ways, and tried to suppress that with certain things, and just didn't work out. And junior year of college, uh I like had always thought, oh man, it'd be cool to like run, a half marathon, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know why, like I'm very much a 0 to 100 kind of person.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say most people are like, 5K sounds cool, but
yeah,
you went
no,
right for the half.
I'm very much like 0 to 100. Like if I'm gonna do something, might as well
Love
go
that.
all in. And I remember my freshman year college roommate, that was one of her goals, and I was like, "Oh, I'll do it with you." And we went for 1 3 mile run, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm never running again. Screw this."
Yeah.
And so then the fact that it came back up my junior year of college was fascinating, and I was like, it kept bubbling up, right? Like running was
Yeah.
like, maybe this is for me. Um, and so I I got in contact with my freshman year college roommate again, and was like, "Hey, like I'm interested in doing a half marathon. Like, would you do one with me?" And she's like, "Yeah, totally. Like, would love to." And she's had always been running at that point. Like,
Mm.
that's like her source of joy. Um, so I started doing it, and at that point too, I was like in a relationship, and it just wasn't great. And so it was like, it was mostly just like all the anxiety. It was like, all right, I need
Yeah.
something that's gonna
I
help with
needed
this.
somewhere to go. Yeah.
Exactly. So started training for the half marathon, and there was like the back of my thought. I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I should do a marathon too. So I was like secretly also like, I'm gonna do that as well
Yeah.
after I
Yeah.
do the half marathon.
Plotting long term.
Yeah, the half marathon is just like a stepping stone, right? We're
Right.
gonna just
Right.
use it as a training race to the marathon.
Right.
Yeah, looking back, I didn't know anything, all right? Like I literally did not.
I
I
love the ambition though. Like that
oh
you went right for marathon. You're like,
yeah,
I'm gonna if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do 100%.
yeah, no, and now I'm over here like, oh, I need to just like go full send and do a 100 miler without even doing like anything above a
Yeah.
marathon. I'm like, Mackenzie, chill out, dude. So this was like 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, and start training. And I don't know anything about running. Like, I didn't even know that you had to, like, get fitted for certain shoes. I didn't know, like,
Right.
what socks to wear. I didn't know anything.
Right.
Didn't know the difference between, like, certain shirts materials, like, polyester versus, like, cotton. So, like, I would
Yeah.
wear, like, cotton shirts in, like, Raleigh, North Carolina, where it
Oof.
is, like, 90 degrees and 100%
Yeah.
humidity. Like, it was fine.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
like, dying.
Yeah, for
Um
sure.
yeah. And so we started training and, like, it was going well. Um and I started getting, like, I started learning some of the ins and outs. Like, I got, like, a vest from REI. It was like $40,
Yeah.
and learning that, learning nutrition, what I liked and what I didn't like. Um and I started learning, oh, I probably need to get some actual running shoes. So I went from running in, like, some off-brand, like, Adidas shoes from Walmart to, like, actual, like, Brooks shoes that worked for
And
me.
how much of a difference did it make? I mean,
It's
shoes
a
were
huge
like a
difference.
game changer for me.
Huge difference. If there is
Yeah,
one thing, like, I'm like, running can be a very inexpensive sport, but if there's
totally.
one thing I tell anyone to purchase, it is good socks and a good pair of shoes. Like, that
Definitely.
is the one thing. You don't have to race a day in your life. You don't need to
Right.
get all the fancy clothes. Like, just please get shoes and socks,
And
please.
earlier than you think too, because I feel like
Yes.
people are like, I can't get, I'm only running a 10K. I
Mhm.
don't need nice shoes for this. You do. Like your knees and your ankles and your hips will thank you later for
Yeah,
sure.
yes, yes. And so that was a huge learning curve. So I ran that race, and I remember, like, mile 10, because I wore, like, Bombas socks, but they were
Hmm.
cotton.
Hmm.
Massive blister on the bottom of my foot. Like, it did not go
Yep.
away for ages. So that was another learning experience, all that kind of stuff. And then I, like, was like, all right, I did the half marathon. I can totally do this marathon. So I, like, shoot for one that's, like, in 2 months from that half marathon. And that's when the injuries started to happen. Because I didn't know, oh, maybe I should strength train, maybe I should stretch, maybe I
Mm.
should do mobility. I
Yeah,
literally
just
did not
trying a
know.
lot.
I did not know shit about shit. Sorry if that's, but,
No,
like,
it's totally fine.
I literally knew nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so that kind of stopped that dream a little bit. And that was in 2022. So I stopped running, quite frankly, like, after that. Like, I was like, all
Mm.
right, like, I did the half marathon, set out for my goal. I'm done. I'm good. I don't need to run anymore.
Right, right.
Um, Kind of got back into weightlifting, and uh then at that point I was going into my senior year of college and was like, I need to do something to prove to myself that, like, I can do something for me and
Hmm.
by myself. And then the marathon came up, and I was like, "Okay, we're going back into this running thing." Like, it
Yeah,
just, the way
it
that
kept
running
coming
just
up.
kept, yeah, it just kept coming up, and I think it was because I just started to quickly realize it was the only thing that truly helped my anxiety at that time,
Mm.
and just does in general. And it's the only thing that I have found in my life that, like, one has just healed so many parts of, like, things I've experienced. Like, I was talking about this with somebody else the other day. I was like, um the link of people that experience, like, trauma in any form, like, shape or form, that go into, like, these ultra endurance sports and
Yeah,
activities is insane. Like, that pipeline
definitely.
is crazy, because when you think about it, like, when you're going out there for a long period of time and you're just with your thoughts, like, you do so much healing, you do so much processing that,
Totally.
like,
Yeah,
you don't necessarily have the time, and for some people the resources to do with therapy. And it's like,
definitely.
I mean, it's free therapy in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
Um, so I just learned that quickly and knew, okay, I need to do something for myself. And for me, that was a marathon my senior year of college. And I took everything I knew from the half marathon and I was like, all right, I need to really invest in some good stuff. Um, Play around with, like, maybe some different energies and whatnot, and just started training. Um, at that point, I didn't really quite understand the idea of, like, easy runs and, like,
Yeah.
the importance of that and the different types of runs, like tempo runs, speed workout, intervals, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I was just going every run full out. Like, that's what I thought you needed to do to be a runner. And my minimum pace that I wanted to hit was, like, a 10-minute mile.
Mhm.
So, like, I would go out, and if I didn't hit a 10-minute mile, my run was a fail. If I took a walk
Mhm.
break, my run was a fail.
Yeah, that all or
And
nothing
it
mindset.
was it was very challenging, because it's like, when you go from, like, half marathon to marathon world, it's two very different
Very
mindsets that you have
different.
to take on. And um, the mindset that I had in the half marathon did work. Like, yeah, a 9-10 minute pace, you can keep that, but like initially maybe. But when you go
Right.
into a marathon, it's not just two half marathons stacked on one another. It is a
No.
completely different race.
Yes. And I feel like a lot of people say that too. They'll
Oh yeah.
say that you're just doubling 13 miles. I would say it's three separate races. It's like
Oh yeah.
race to 13, and then
Yep.
it's 13 to like 20 where you're like,
Yep.
okay, maybe I can do this. And then 20
Yeah.
to 26, you're like, I've never ran a day in my life. I know
Yeah.
nothing about this. Everything's out the window. Like, this is
Yeah.
insane.
Sheer willpower at that point.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
And so I signed up for this race. I was like, all right, I want it to be in North Carolina. I want it to be relatively close to Raleigh, like, just take like a little weekend trip.
Mm-hmm.
And so I landed on Elizabeth City, North Carolina. It was like the Coast Guard Marathon, flat, it's on the coast, like great.
Yeah.
That's
Perfect.
something I can do. Um and so I mean, like I felt good during training. I had one bad training run that kind of started to put things into perspective for me
Mm-hmm.
as far as my pace was concerned. It was the 18-mile long run because I was just doing like Hal Higdon's like
Yeah.
beginner marathon training plan. It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
free.
Yeah. It's a great one. I
Um,
did the same one.
yeah, exactly. And so I went on this 18-mile long run and I bonked. Like that was when I realized like you can't just go out at the same
Right.
pace every single run. Like you have to have variability and you have to like take your easy runs easy and not just
Definitely.
like my heart rate was elevated every single run to a point where it was like I can't sustain this for long periods of time.
Right.
Um
Right.
and so then that's when I talked to my uncle and he's a triathlete and
Cool.
he was like, "Hey, have you heard of heart rate zone training?" I was like, "Nope." And so he sent me some stuff, looked into it a little bit, and at that point I was so far in the training, I was like, I can't really implement this to the extent that I would want to.
Sure.
Um, but I did pay attention to it a little bit towards the end of that training cycle, and it kind of helped, alleviate some of the pressure I put on myself to perform
Mm-hmm.
at a certain pace. Like
Right. Right.
instead
Yeah.
of going into my first marathon thinking I needed to hold a 9 to 10 minute pace, I was like,
Which
you
is
know what?
crazy.
We're just gonna chill out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crossing the finish line is the feat.
Is the goal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so the marathon was March of last year. It's like March 4th, I think. And um, there was a lot of feels. Like it was like this huge buildup. Like I had accomplished all these things during training that I was like, man, I've never ran these distances before.
Yeah.
Like I remember I would come back from like on weekends and my roommates at the time were like, "Oh, like where were you?" I was like, "Oh, just had my long run." They're like, "How long did you run?" And I was like, "Oh, just 15 miles." And they're like, "Uh."
Casually. 15. Yeah.
I was like, "You guys know that I'm doing this." They're like, "Oh, no, but like 15 miles." I'm like, "It is a marathon, so
Yeah. I There's 11 more to go on top
yeah,
of that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was kind of like just seeing everyone's reactions, especially like, people in my life are like, "You're really gonna do this? Like, are you sure you
Yeah.
can do this on top of everything else you're doing?" I'm like, "Oh, yes, absolutely. Like, I'm gonna
Did
do
you
this."
find that motivating when they would say, "Are you really going to do that?"
I hate
Yeah.
that. That's one thing about me. I hate when people are like, "Are you sure you can do that?" Like, that's gonna be a lot. That's gonna be really hard on your body. Like, that just like I'm like, "Oh, now I've got to prove
Now,
you wrong
yeah, yeah.
as well as everybody else." Like,
Right, right.
I don't know why. I just like that uh anyway. But and so I went to that weekend and like my friends came down and my mom and stepdad came down and we started that race and it was so windy. Like I don't
Mm.
know what happened overnight, but it was like the day before it was great, lovely, like beautiful. Next day, I mean it was still sunny and awesome, but it
Right.
was so windy. Like I'm talking 30 plus mile per hour winds. And it was an out and back. And so we start the race. I'm in my feels. I'm doing a good job, like hanging out, vibing.
Yeah.
A little excited. My heart rate's a little high, but having a good time overall.
Yeah.
Get to the halfway mark. We turn around and it the rest of that race was just 30-mile-per-hour headwinds. Like
Jeez.
you are just trudging along, like
Fighting for your life at that point.
fighting, and it's the
Yeah.
worst half of the race. Like it's like
Right.
when you really couldn't have done this on the way back. Like you had to
Right,
do it
right.
like on the worst part,
Yeah.
and I mean, and it was also in such a small town, and it was a very small race, so it was like there was, I think, from mile, oh goodness, like 15 to probably about 22, like I was by myself. There
Oh
was
gosh, yeah.
like the separation from me to other runners was so significant, and like I
Yeah.
was also like in relatively the back of the pack, and um so that mentally was really, really challenging.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't ever want to do this again. Like,
Right.
because when you're by yourself for that long, especially at the hardest parts of the race, it's, oh man, I will never forget. But like also proving to yourself, hey, but I still did it. I still got through that
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. What during that point when you're hitting that wall, like the 30-mile-an-hour
Yeah.
hour winds are coming your way, you haven't seen anybody in a while, like what what if any like doubt was going through your head? Were you thinking I might not finish this thing? Like did that ever
Yeah.
cross your mind?
Yeah. I think for me at that point, because it's like running is my like only form of like control in a sense.
Yeah,
Like you have a choice, right? Like you're especially when you're doing a very large distance. I mean, even any distance for that matter. Like you can go out for a run now and you can decide whenever to stop running.
right.
It's like when you're in that moment, it's like, and this sounds so extreme, but like you're making a vote and you're casting a vote for yourself, right?
Totally.
Moments like, and for me, it was like no matter how much doubt I'm feeling, it's like all I know to do right now is just one foot in front of the other.
Mhm.
And like you can text whoever you want to text on the course and like try to get as much encouragement, but it's like those voices, and I think for me it was like I had to prove to myself in this race that I could do anything, and I could
Yeah.
especially do an activity that I used to hate,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but now has brought me so much peace. And it's like I didn't want this, like those one moments where it was like the voice is like, I don't think you can actually do this, like if you just
Yeah.
told your mom right now she'd come pick you up and you could be done. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, no, like I've already come this far, like I'm already at mile 18, I am not
Yeah.
stopping now. Like yeah, my body hurts and it's uncomfortable, but like my ankle's not broke, like nothing's broken, like I can
Right,
still
right.
keep going. And for me, and I think for a lot of people that do a marathon, I mean half marathon, marathon, 5K, 10K, like are trying to prove to themselves that they can do something they never thought possible, right? Like,
Definitely.
and because I think like running is like the most uncomfortable thing. It's
Oh,
not fun.
100%, especially
Like
distance. Yeah.
yeah, like it's not enjoyable. Like
No.
because one, you're like you're with your thoughts, like you're forcing yourself to be with your thoughts on top of
Mhm.
also just moving your body in like such a like uncomfortable way
Yeah,
sometimes.
and
Like
being on your feet for, like, 3+ hours at some points.
yes,
Yeah, it's definitely
exactly. And
not
you're like,
the most comfortable.
why am I doing this? Like, why
Yeah.
am I torturing myself?
Yeah.
But it's like, I think just the feeling afterwards, like that just makes it so much more worth it. And for me, it was like, I just had that, like, that finish line in my head so much because it was like, that, like, I'm crossing that finish line for the person that I was, like, during the pandemic. Like, I'm running for,
Mhm.
like, I'm running for the girl that, like, struggled with, like, body image and, like, food, and, like, I'm running for the girl that, like, experienced some horrible crap in college, or I'm, running for the girl that has, like, this crippling anxiety, like, so many reasons, like, I'm running for this girl who is
Yeah.
me because, like, I just need to prove and I need to, like, be able to show my worth to myself almost. And it's like
Yeah.
that, like, I
Yeah.
think for me it was like all the doubt and like the voices in the back of my head, it was like, you have no chance, dog. Like you're not gonna like be able to get through to me at this point, even if I'm
Yeah.
like struggling. So
Yeah, I'm gonna crawl past this finish line if I have to.
exactly, it's like
Yeah.
if unless like my foot is broken, like I'm still doing this thing. So I don't really
Yeah.
know if I answered your question, but that's my answer.
No, totally. No, yeah. I mean, I just asked about doubt, and I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate to it towards the end of the marathon. I had that doubt creep in. Like, are you sure you're like, is your back gonna give out?
Yeah.
Or your knees gonna give out? Like, are you gonna puke in front of everybody at the finish line? Like, I
Yeah.
think all of that goes through goes through your mind towards the end. But I think you're spot on. It's like you're not running for yourself that specific day. Like, you're not running to push through that pain at that moment. You're running for all of the pain that you've experienced thus far in your life
Yeah.
when you're at that point. Um,
Yeah. My
yeah,
mom said something I remember before my first marathon that has always resonated with me. Um, like she was giving me a pep talk, and she's really good at pep talks. But she was like, "You've already run the marathon," and
yeah,
I was like, "She's like, you have spent the last 4 to 5 months training for this. You've put in the miles. Like you've already ran the marathon. Like
yeah. I love
the
that.
actual marathon is just a celebration. It's like a resemblance of all that hard work. Like even though like the max mileage you've done is a 20-mile race or a 20-mile run, you are going to be able to get through those last 6.2 miles like it's nothing because like
Yeah,
you've done the work, you've ran so many marathons in your life, like you've
yeah.
done hard stuff that this is just like a symbolic way to show that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
like that a lot. I've heard that too, just that the marathon is like, you've already done it. It's a celebration. You should enjoy it. I mean, you're
exactly.
not going to enjoy it while it's happening to you, but you're going to
Yeah.
enjoy it a lot after the fact. But yeah, there's this big buildup, and
Mhm.
I think it's really important to keep that in mind when you're going through training as well, that like, this is the work. I'm making sacrifices for a reason. I've got an endpoint at the end of this thing. I've got
Yeah.
something that I'm working towards. And then on the day of, you're just putting one foot in front of the other and making the best happen.
Yeah.
Um, I
Exactly.
also heard some great advice on my race day, that if you've never ran a marathon before, you're guaranteed to run the best marathon that you've ever ran that day. So just go out there and do it. Like,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
planning. Most of us are not planning on winning the dang thing. So
Mm-mm.
just go out there and cross
No.
the finish line. Like,
Yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and it's also like cool, I think, like, and this is not talked about a lot, but like the people that you meet along, like on
yeah,
marathon day, like I remember there was this gentleman that like we were at mile 17 and we started talking. He came up to me, he was like, "Hey, what time is it?" And I had like told him, and we started talking, and he's like, "Is this your first marathon?" I was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm, da, da, da." And he's like, "You're gonna get the bug," and I'm like, "Absolutely not. I don't think I am. This is miserable right now." And he's like, "No, you're gonna get the bug. I trust me." And
yeah,
I was like, mm. I did get the bug,
yep,
but like he just was so kind and just like hearing his story. Like, I mean, that man had ran like 20 plus marathons and
yeah,
like he's done all the world majors and like he's just out there for the sake of moving his body, and it brings
yeah,
him happiness and joy. And I was like, oh man, like it, because at that point, like I was still in this mindset, like I need to go fast, I need to keep moving, da da da.
yeah.
And that, like listening to him talk, I was like, you can do this, and it's not about like breaking records. What?
Right,
Like
right.
being able to hear that from somebody else was just, it was really really cool because it
Yeah,
changed it. It was one of many things that changed my perspective on running and what it can be and
yeah.
what it should be for a lot of people, right? So,
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah,
yeah.
and he ran, you like you said, he 20, all of the majors, 20 different races,
Yeah.
whatever. And you said that that race you were running was even a small hometown run. So the fact that he was out there doing it, not for the whatever t-shirt you're going to get,
No.
not for, the perks that he can post
Mhm.
online or whatever, he was just doing it to do it. I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um well,
Yep.
I want to take it back just a little bit, cuz I think I'm curious where, from like 0 to half marathon point. So going from, you said you were an athlete in high school, team sport
Mhm.
athlete. I was also a team sport athlete, so I understand like you almost have this itch that you need to scratch after high school
Yeah.
sports, where you're like, I want to be able to move my body and work towards something, but I'm not really
Yeah.
sure where to put this energy.
Yeah.
So what training, you said you followed the Hal Higdon one for your marathon, but what were you following in the beginning? Were you just going out and doing it for time? Like, what got you started?
So I had seen my mom do a half marathon when I was, I think, in elementary school maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um and she just did Hal Higdon. So like that's all I knew
Mm-hmm.
was Hal Higdon. And if to anyone that's listening that doesn't know what Hal Higdon is, he's just this guy that is like this, crazy marathoner, and just started this whole like basically free plans for runners at
Yeah.
various levels. And he has like very novice one beginners plans, and they're great, like like they're something, right,
Mhm.
if you don't want to pay for a coach. um and didn't want to, so
Right. Yeah.
and but looking back, like It wasn't the best in the sense, like, because I literally, like, was not running at all, and then I just jumped right into that plan, and it has you
Yeah.
running, like, I think 10 miles, like, for the first week, and, like, that really shocked my body. Like, I
Yeah.
remember I went for a 3-mile run with the mindset of going out as fast as you can to get the run
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
and I could not move for 3 days, and I was like, "What am I doing? Why am I doing this?"
0 to 100
Um
for sure.
Exactly, and so that was, like, I just knew that I knew the Hal Higdon plan just because of my mom,
Yeah.
and it was just
That's a
convenient.
good starting point, yeah. Like,
Exactly.
to your point, it's free, it's decent enough, like, it explains a little bit to you. I I think for me, it was tough because I didn't understand, like, it had good detail, but I didn't really understand what it meant until later, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I think it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a decent place to start.
It gets the job done if you
Yeah.
don't know anything about running, and
Yeah.
for me, I didn't know anything about running, and I didn't really do any research. I didn't have social media at that point, so I
Yeah.
wasn't following anyone that, like,
Yeah.
knew what they
Yeah.
were talking about, and so I was just like, "Ah, this works," like, no one else around me is, like, a big, half marathoner or marathoner, so I'm just gonna wing it here,
Yep.
um and, like, I sprinkled in, like, some strength training here and there because that's what I was doing in college at that point, but
Yeah.
not as I probably should've, so,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
So looking back now on that experience, what do you think you would have done different if you had that back?
Oh, a lot more research,
Mhm.
I would've, like I don't know if there is this, and maybe there probably is at this point, but, like, I would just wanna know, like, the top 5 things I needed to do to run a half marathon.
Yeah.
Like, okay, get good shoes, get a good pair of socks that
Yeah,
are
like a checklist.
moisture wicking, like, yeah, like, literally tell me 5 things I need to do, okay? I'm gonna
Yeah.
do them, give me the plan that's actually gonna work, and not just, like, get me out there running, like, I need
Yeah.
some explanation and reasoning why, um, and, like, also, I, like, wanna know races that are gonna be, like, very pace inclusive, because like, I didn't like,
Mhm.
you never know how long it's gonna take you, like, you can have, like, a
Right,
set
right.
time, but you don't know how long it's gonna take you until you get to race day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, especially for your first races.
Yeah. You
Um,
can guess, but you really have no idea.
exactly, and I just wish that I would have been able to have someone or know someone or a figure, um, that, like, told me it was okay to chill. Like, you
Right.
don't
Right.
need to go all out because I am a very competitive person, so, like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what's so ironic about the position I'm in now is, like, I'm very much like, "Meh," like, do what you gotta do to get it done,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and, 2, 3 years ago, me would be like, "Mackenzie, what are you doing? Like, you're not
Yeah.
Boston qualifying right now? What is wrong with you?" And
Yeah.
it's because 'cause I'm just so internally competitive with myself, like, that's why
Yeah.
swimming was so great for me because it was an individual sport, um,
Mm.
unless you were on a relay team, but, like, even then, it's, like, you against you, and
Right,
so
right.
I just wish I would have had someone or a figure or, like, a runner that, like, had done these incredible things, like, when I met that guy on the, marathon course that was like, "Yeah, like, I run walk, I chill, like, I'm in
Yeah.
no" and it was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"You can do that?
This is
Like,
allowed? Yeah.
this is
I had so many
allowed?"
people when I would post, like, before I, like, had my running page and it was
Mhm.
runners that I was posting to because that changed a lot. Like,
Yeah.
once you were posting to runners that people got it, I stopped getting these messages, but in the beginning when I would post just on my regular stuff, I
Yeah.
had so many people reach out to me and ask me, like, "You can walk during marathon training? Like, you can
Yeah.
walk?" I'm like, "It's 26 miles. You think I'm running this whole thing? You're
Yeah.
like, you're out of your
See,
mind."
I didn't think it was allowed, like, I kid you not, if I went on a run in, like, the first year and a half of my running journey, I would stop my runs if I took a walk break, and they would be failed, like, they would
Yeah.
not count. Even though I probably would get 6 miles into an 8-mile run, and if I took a 1 walk break for 1 minute, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and it's amazing,
So
like, you
mm,
did that and you stuck with it 'cause I feel like so many people have that all or nothing mindset, and when they can't hit those
yeah.
milestones, they just quit, and I guess you even said that you took some time off because you probably had a little bit of that all or nothing mindset still.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it definitely there was periods, like, after the first half marathon and I got hurt, like, I had a pretty bad hip, IT band and, like, just inflammation and injury, and
Yeah,
that put me out for, oh gosh, probably about f 5 months, and also just motivation around running too wasn't there. And then like 2023 rolled around, and I needed it again, and I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this the right way. I'm gonna do some more research, but I still had that all or nothing mindset. And then I
Yeah.
ran the first marathon in March last year. Took a couple months off, just like one or two, more from just the aspect of like I was graduating college and
Yeah.
like
You
wanted
had a
to
lot going
enjoy
on.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
my brother was getting married, like I had things
Reasonable.
going on.
Yeah.
And so but then I got back into it, and that's when everything really started to shift, when I started training for Chicago last year.
Okay.
Um
Yeah.
and I let go of all expectations and just took all of the pressure off myself. I think that's the biggest difference, is just taking the pressure off of yourself.
Yeah.
And as an all or nothing person, that is extremely hard to do.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and you kind of already answered this question, but was that the point when you started training for the Chicago Marathon, that was the point when you started to like think about pace inclusivity and think about
Mm.
what that meant for you as a runner? Is that the point where you started to think about those kind of things?
Um, yeah, so, uh, like I mentioned a little earlier, when I was training for the first marathon, I went on an 18-mile long run,
Yeah.
had a complete breakdown because I just got totally, like, gassed, and called my uncle, and he was like, "Look into heart rate zone training." So I started doing that a little bit, towards the tail end of that training cycle,
Mhm.
um, and then ran the marathon, experienced life, and then at that point, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do a marathon again, and if I do, it'll be in a couple years. But then
Sure.
my mom was like, "Hey, I'm gonna do the Chicago Marathon," and I was like,
Good for her.
"You're not, you're not really a running or a
Yeah.
runner." Like, like she's done a half marathon
Uh-huh.
before, and that was like 10 years earlier, and I was like, okay. But the larger story of that is, at the time, my aunt, her sister was in ICU in Chicago,
Mm.
and she had two double lung transplants
Wow.
in 2022. Probably gonna get that date wrong, but the whole idea was, my mom was like, okay, because at that point when my aunt got transferred to Chicago, the Chicago Marathon was happening, so that
Mhm.
was in
Mhm.
October of 2022, and she was like, all right, you're by next year at this time, I'm gonna be crossing the Chicago um marathon line, and you're gonna be with me. She told my aunt that, right? And, just for health reasons, that didn't happen. But my aunt, like, the goal was to get my aunt out of the ICU and out of the hospital by that weekend.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, well, crap, mom, like, you're doing this really cool thing for my aunt. Like,
No
I
pressure.
gotta, I gotta do it too.
Yeah.
And so, we went in for the lottery. My mom, me, and my friend Sydney, they both got in through the lottery by some miracle, and I didn't get in. So I was like, oh
Oh
crap,
no.
like, I'm not going to be able to run this.
Yeah.
And then it was like kind of a full circle moment, because there's a cystic fibrosis foundation, which is all around, like, cystic fibrosis is a lung disease. And one of my dear friends had passed away from cystic fibrosis a couple years before that. And I was like, all right, this is going to be in memory of him, and then also my aunt. And so it was like, great. All right, I'm
I
running
love that.
Chicago.
Yeah.
And I knew at that point, all right, I took everything I learned from the first marathon and how I felt after that. And it was like, I want to go into this marathon with no expectations. Like, this is a huge marathon, it's a world
Yeah.
major. And I want to just be able to be there for my mom, be there for my aunt, and just celebrate it, and, like, just enjoy running.
Yeah.
Not
Well, the second one was like it's less about yourself, right? The first one you had to get over
exactly.
this personal hurdle, and now you've got something else that you're doing it for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And for me, it was like, I think, as far as like the pace inclusivity is concerned, like, I just when you experience the first one, like, at the level that I had experienced it, of like putting so much pressure on myself initially to perform, to then go into this, it was just like, I'm just doing this because it brings me joy.
Yeah.
And why would I put pressure on myself to perform on something that brings me joy? Like,
Right.
undue pressure. Like, yeah, you can put a good amount of healthy pressure on yourself to do something that you enjoy. It makes it even more fun.
Yeah.
But I was putting like undue pressure. It was like making it unenjoyable for me.
Sure.
And
Sure.
um so yeah, that kind of was that mindset. And it was also too like my mom hadn't run in a long time, so it was like I wanted to be there for her and to show her that she could do it as well.
Yeah.
And like so we kind of I mean, like I moved back and from college, and like I just wanted to be with her and like help her through that training process. So we would go on our long runs together, like motivate
Nice.
each other.
Yeah.
And so it started with that, like on like a smaller level of community. Um, but then I just was like, I remember when I started doing heart rate zone training for the Chicago, I was getting so frustrated because it is like such a mental battle when you go from going all out and averaging a 9 to 10 minute mile to then like a 15-minute mile.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah, it
trying to
messes with
keep
you.
it, you're trying to build that base back up in a healthy, sustainable way rather than like, going all out and leading to injury, like what happened to
Mhm.
me.
And
And
burnout and yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And so I remember like I was like, I cannot believe I'm going this slow. And I was like, okay, but that's where I'm at right now. Like we got to embrace it, we got to accept it. Like I'm still
Mhm.
doing the distance, I'm still getting it done.
Mhm.
And when I moved back home, I was like, all right, we got to find community. Like I got to find community. And that's when I went to, a couple group runs and experienced getting left behind. And I was like, already, there is an issue
Yeah.
here. There is
Found
something
it. There we go.
there is something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, meanwhile, like my friend that was also training for Chicago with us, like she's down in Mississippi, and I was like calling her, and I'm like, dude, I want to run with somebody, but like my mom and I were on opposite schedules. Like what do I do? And she's like,
Right.
well, and like I was telling her about these group run experiences, and she's like, well, like what about posting? And I was like, on what? She was like, social
How
media.
exactly? Yeah.
Social media. I'm like, dude, I don't have social media. Like, I had deleted all social media at that point. I had been like,
That's
did not
crazy. I
have
didn't
it
realize
for.
you were starting from like
Oh
0.
yeah, no, I hated social media. Then that's a whole nother topic and
Yeah.
story. But like for about 2 years, I didn't have TikTok, I didn't have Instagram, didn't have Snapchat, none of it. And I was like, I really don't want to do that, but you might have a point. And also at that point, I was kind of transitioning in my job to social media and marketing, so I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this will work
Align.
ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love being creative and like having that kind of outlet. It's really nice. And I clearly wasn't connecting here in my area, so I was like, well, I bet
Let's look
the only other
online.
the only other option is online.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's use social media for its original intent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then I posted my first video on TikTok, and it it was like so low level. I look back at that video now and I'm like, I physically cringe at myself. But like
Yeah.
it's awkward. Like you have your like phone and you're like, okay guys, like I'm like,
Yeah, the
oh my
first time you're like,
god.
"What am I doing with my life?" Like, did I really just hold my phone up like that?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But like, and it struck a chord. And I think for me, like, especially like around like the realistic runner name, it was like I didn't want to call myself slow and I didn't want to call
sure.
myself
Sure.
fast because I think it's so subjective to
Totally.
everyone's situation. And realistically, I've got other crap going on in my life, but like I'm still
Right.
trying to make these seemingly impossible things possible for myself. And
Yeah.
that was like the whole idea of it was like, I want this to be an inclusive space. Like, truthfully, a realistic runner can be just about any runner you want it to be,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
we all have our own internal idea of what a realistic runner is. I know
Yeah.
what it is for me,
Yeah.
and it's attracted most of that crowd, but also like it's attracted a lot of other people because it resonates with a lot of people because it's like realistically like nothing's perfect during a training cycle. Like you're gonna
No,
mess
not
up,
at
you're
all.
you're gonna
You're gonna miss a
you're
run.
you're gonna miss a run, you're
Yep.
gonna you're gonna have a full-time job where you're gonna miss a run, you're gonna have
Definitely.
other obligations, pets, kids, like whatever it is. And I think, and that's just like where that all started. And it was not in the plan. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way. Like I think
Yeah. Yeah.
what started as a way for me to build community and to feel like I wasn't the only one, because coming back here and going to several group runs where I was the last one was really demoralizing in the sense of like I had just done a marathon. I'm a runner. Like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
need to
You
prove
start
that to
to
anyone.
identify with that. Yeah.
And then to just like not feeling like one, like I'm around all these other runners and I can't even keep up with them. I was like I there's no way I'm the only one out there that's has these similar experiences and these similar thoughts and ways and beliefs.
Yeah.
So that kind of kickstarted this whole thing.
Yeah.
This
No, that's really
little
cool.
fun, silly little thing.
This little community you built.
This,
No,
yeah,
it's great. It's great. I love it. I mean, and to your point, like realistic runner, I'll even admit, like I originally just assumed it was like pace directed, but you just said it. It's a lot more than just coming down to pace. It's coming down
yeah,
to like people who have normal lives, are living day to day completely like a normal person
yeah,
would, and finding time to fit in something that makes them happy. Um,
yeah,
and taking the
yeah.
pressure off of that, which is great. Do you I know you've talked about it a little bit on other platforms, but do you mind diving in a little bit more to that group run, that first one that really made you realize, okay, there's something going on here? Like, what
Hmm.
was that experience like for you, if you're comfortable going through it?
Oh yeah. The very first one, I they had because in where I live, there's a lot of like resources for just active lifestyles, right? And
Yeah.
um, the running community is very large, and especially like ultra marathoners and just fast runners and whatnot. But again, it was like one of those things I didn't really do a lot of research on. I just was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like there's a running store, like they're definitely gonna have a running group. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I work within the running industry for my day job, like, working with retailers and brands. So it's like I'm familiar with the notions of this. Like, yeah, it'll be great. So found my local retailer and, sure enough, they had a Wednesday group run and they publicized and marketed online. All paces are welcome, walkers welcome, dogs welcome, strollers welcome, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
like, awesome. Love this. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
And, obviously when you go to something new, you're putting yourself out there. It's intimidating. Like, you're probably going to be a little awkward. Probably not going to talk to anyone immediately, like, until you
Yeah.
start doing the activity. Like, that's just how it is. But I'm also very much
Yeah.
like, well, you got to try it. You got to try everything once. And
Yeah. Yeah.
until,
If it doesn't work
like,
out, it doesn't work out. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so I go, I'm nervous, but I'm like, but I feel confident still. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
I've ran a race, and we're good. And we start this run. It's like you can do a 3 mile loop or a 4 mile loop. And I was like, oh, I'll
Mm-hmm.
do 4 miles. Like, I need to get some miles in.
Mm-hmm.
And um, even though like I'm from the area, the area that we were running in, I was not familiar with, and so I was like, okay, well they have a map. I'll take a picture of the map, and I'll be fine. And we start running. I don't know what my brain was like. I need to be in the front. So I started in the front
Yeah.
and quickly I'm getting past. Like, I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. We started going downhill, so I'm feeling good about myself, right?
Sure.
And sure enough, just more and more people keep passing me, more and more and more and more. And before I know it, we're not even like a mile and a half in to this 4 mile run, and no one's around me. Like, sick. Like,
Like someone else has got to pass me soon, right?
yeah, and exactly. And there was an gosh, bless this woman that was there with me. Like, she stayed with me for a little bit, but she was still
Mm,
pushing it, and I'm like huffing and puffing. Like, when I say
mhm,
like I look like a red tomato, and
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
like like when you're running with someone, you're like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they're trying to
like
talk to you and you're like,
that was
"Please,
me.
give
That
me
was
a
me.
second."
Essentially, the little blurb I made was my title was, I thought this was a 4 mile fun run. Turns out it's a 4 mile time trial.
Oh,
Um, and like the thing, it was like I just talked about like, and this was like when I had two friends on Strava,
yeah,
and I was like, yeah, like I went to this like wanting to find a group to run with,
yeah,
and it turned quickly into like I'm trying to break a record over here, like
yeah, yeah,
because like I was running at like a 10-minute pace, and I had not run at that pace in a really long time. So like
yeah.
my body had gotten used to like low and slow
Slow, yep,
vibes,
yep.
and then going to that, my body was like, "What are you doing?"
For 4 miles
Um,
too, like, I feel like I could
mhm.
push myself through a 5K, but
Yeah,
adding another mile on top, I
yeah,
would be the same.
and we were not running in a flat area either. Like, it was like
Mm,
hills on hills on hills,
brutal.
and um, yeah. So it was just funny, like reading back to that, and I remember like the question I asked, and it's so funny. I didn't even know like I was gonna name my TikTok or Instagram this, but I was like, where are my realistic runners at?
Oh, I love that. You foreshadowed a little
Oh,
bit.
like in July and like started this in August, so that was like kind of
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, so I after that, like, and I'm very much like if something happens to me and I'm like, I don't like this, but I'm determined to like like have something, and like for me it was community. Like
Mhm.
I'll just create it for myself. Like I'll figure it
Mhm.
out. Like,
Yeah.
and luckily, like there was a huge Facebook group for running in general, just where I am. So I just sent out a message like, "Hey, this is the pace I run at. Who, wants to run with me like once or twice a week?" Like thinking like maybe 3 or 5 people would
Yeah.
comment, and then it was just like abundant. Like so many people messaged me and were like,
That's so cool.
"Whoa, like I've been wanting to find a group, but
I was
everyone
gonna
here is
say,
so
yeah.
fast." Like,
You
and
probably
so
were just speaking to so many people that were thinking that exact same thing, but were too
yeah.
scared to say something.
Exactly,
That's
because I mean, it's a weird and awkward thing to put your pace out there, and at that point, I was just, like, so, like, whatever about my pace, I just
yeah.
don't care, like, and because for so long I did care about my pace, because
Yeah.
that's the only question people ever ask is, "What is your pace?" And it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I got to a
What
point
was
where I
your
was like,
marathon time? Doesn't
I
matter.
got yeah, I got to a point where it's like, I don't really give a shit, like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna embrace my pace, literally. I think, like, Nicole Below Average Runner says that, like, "Embrace your pace,"
Yeah.
and, that's what I did, and so being able to, like, have that confidence just to post on that
Yeah.
Facebook group and just see what's out there, it was, like, the same response as when I posted that first video on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, okay, I'm not the only one."
No, no, there's a whole community of
So,
people out there, and they're
yeah.
they're the silent ones too, which is I
Mhm.
feel like recently there's been at least for the people that I follow, I feel like there's been more of a community of people who are more willing to post their pace and show their journey from like start
Yeah.
to marathon or whatever they're shooting for, which is so cool to see. But yeah, especially early on, there weren't a lot of people who were talking about slower paces, and
No.
people wouldn't really start posting about running until they were already at the point where they were running 9-minute miles or 10-minute miles. So yeah, you found a niche of people that I think were probably
Yeah.
hoping for a community like that, but they just didn't think that there was one for them.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's, like, the coolest thing is, like, especially not being on social media for so long to then being on social media and, like, seeing that difference because, like, I
Yeah,
remember when I was on social media and, like, those games that you play with yourself that you're like, "Oh, I need to get faster, I need to improve,"
yeah,
all that
yeah.
stuff, like, actually, no.
Psychoanalyzing everything. Yeah.
Like, it's, like, just it's your journey, it's whatever you wanna do at the end of the day, and you're conquering the distances the same way, so
Yep.
it's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I don't
6
know.
miles is 6 miles, whether you run it in 8 minutes and kill yourself
Yeah,
or you run it in
exactly.
13 and feel good about it.
6 miles in
To
8
each
minutes
their
would be
own.
wild.
That would be pretty crazy. 8 minutes per mile. I should clarify that. Imagine.
I'm like, that is a
That's a
universe record
superhuman.
right there.
Yeah,
I'm like, that is, I
not
don't know
gonna
about
happen.
that. That's
Um,
funny.
that's so cool though. So you got to, or you had your experiences that weren't so great. You created your own community. When did you start to like when did you start to have meetups and run with other people who had like paces like you?
Almost immediately. Like, I
Mhm.
started that in end of August, September, and we had, like, our first run within, like, a week of kinda getting the group organized and people joining it, and it's been like that ever since. I mean, like, and it's been a journey. Like, there's been, I mean, probably from August to, oh, January, February this year, it was like only like one or two people would show up.
Mhm.
And, it was like, oh man, like, why am I doing this? Like, because there was a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people in the Facebook group. So I was like so confused, like, why is no one showing up? Like, there's this
Yeah.
many people in the group, but why is no one showing up? And one thing I'm really starting to learn in this position of, like, leading this group run is like the importance of trust
Yeah.
and how much trust has to be built before one, people come out, but also two, understand that, like, it is a safe place, and it is like when I say no runner gets left behind, I mean no
You
runner
mean
will
it.
get left behind.
Yeah.
Um, and I think people have to kind of like now some of the runners that come more regularly, like now we have like anywhere from 15 to 20 plus that come out, which
Oh,
is like
that's so
so
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
And to go from one or two people, the OGs I call them, um like for such a long time, like I was running, and I love, like, Chuck is my dog. But
Yeah.
he's like 70-year-old man,
I
and
love
it was
that.
just me and him hanging out for like
You're
so
probably the
long, but
highlight of his week.
oh yeah, like it was like, but we would have great conversation. I think
Yeah,
too, it's just like people have to see like the consistency and have to like scope it out for themselves. Like, especially
totally.
like if you have been to a group run, and for many runners in this group, they have been to group runs where they did get left behind and like weren't allowed to take walk breaks,
Right.
and that trust was broken like time and time again.
Right.
And they have to just see, okay, more and more people are coming, like maybe this is actually good. Like, and I still get messages that are like, I don't think I can keep up with you guys, and I'm like, there's only so much reassurance I can do before they just
Sure.
have to come out and experience it for themselves.
Sure.
But like now people are starting to like see, oh, this actually is a good and safe place that like stands by the words as much as possible. And like
Yeah. Yeah.
like there have been a couple failed group runs like where and it's mostly on me, I just don't post the route, and someone like some parts of the group go off in one direction, and like
Oh,
it's
sure.
all a part of the learning process, right? And but for most of the time it's like pretty there and standard. So
Yeah.
anyway.
And are you the one to make sure that nobody gets left behind? Are you the one
Mhm.
that's staying at the back of the pack for the most part and making sure
Yeah.
everybody's in front of you?
Yep. For me it's like I have been the last person too much. I don't
Yeah.
want anyone to ever experience that because it doesn't feel great. And
Right.
in my humble opinion, a good leader is one that stays at the back.
Totally.
And
Totally.
I stand by that statement. Like, you have to, as a group run leader, and I've had so many conversations with other group run leaders and just other people in general, is like your agenda, your training plan, your runs do not matter when you are leading a
Yeah.
group. Like, you have to put your agenda aside, put your ego aside, and be there for people that show up, because
Yep.
the people that show up need to be there for a certain reason, and it took a lot of courage and bravery for some people to show up, and you have to just let go of your own stuff and your own expectations and just be with those people,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
that makes the biggest difference. And like, I don't know, it's like I think back to a lot of other group runs that I've been to, and it's like how big of a difference it would have made if someone circled back and like, or just stayed back there with me, and like
Yeah.
we had a great conversation. And it's like, and it's not coming from a place of pity. It's more just like, hey,
No.
we start together, we end together. Like,
Yeah. It's a community. It's a sense of
and we're
community.
connecting. We're connecting. Like, at the very root of
Yeah.
it, it's all about connection, and the connection has to go from the front to the back.
Totally.
So
I love that. That's so cool.
yeah.
That's so cool. And it's funny, like looking back even now that I know more about your journey, like you
Yeah.
probably could have loved somebody like you in the beginning of your running journey. I think we could
Yeah.
all say that too. It would have
Yeah.
been just so beneficial, maybe would have kickstarted things a bit quicker, would have caused less pressure on yourself and led to less injury if you had somebody that
Yeah.
was telling you in the beginning, like, hey, it's okay to
Yeah.
finish this run, to the best of your ability. So
Yeah.
that's really cool to look back to on your own
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah, I think like just in general, like running can be so intimidating because of just like what we see online and just in
Yeah.
general, and the way that it's perceived. And it's like, it's not really that intimidating, but
Mm-mm.
just
Anyone
the
can do
way
it.
that we talk about it can be very intimidating. So it's like,
Yeah.
how can I make this as least intimidating as possible and show that like truly anyone can be a runner? Like,
Yeah.
anyone is capable of doing any of these distances. It's just a matter of like coming at it from a place of like curiosity and like love and understanding, rather than like, you have to do this big thing and like you have to do it
Totally.
really fast. Like, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
that deep.
No. You have to have grace with yourself, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning. I've said this before, but like, and I don't mean this to deter people from starting to run. Definitely start to run. Find a community
Yeah.
that'll help you through this. But the first 6 months are not going to feel good. Like
No.
it's not. You have to
No.
build a baseline for yourself and get over the point where it doesn't feel good for it to start to be really beneficial. And like you were talking about it being more, like
Yeah.
therapy for you. It takes a second where you you have to push through your body hurting and
Yeah.
your lungs hurting until you get to that point where it's really, really
Yeah.
beneficial. So don't give up in the beginning just because it sucks for a little bit. It gets a lot
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Love
Well,
it.
well, cool. So I guess just a couple closing questions that I've been asking at the end to sort of gather some information. Because like I've said before, like in the beginning, especially as a newer runner, there's a lot of information. A lot of it's conflicting and it's hard to sort through. So, for you, what is some advice that you would give somebody who is looking to run their first marathon?
Mm. Um. Okay. I'm like, let me go back to like my top 5 things I wanted to know.
Yeah.
No,
You give us your list.
no. Oh man. Well, first thing and is shoes. Go to your local running store, get a gait analysis, or go through their fit process and get the right pair of shoes for your feet.
Yep.
This is probably going to be a hot take, but just because what you see online and what the hot shoes, the new shoes are, does not mean that they are the right shoes for you.
Definitely
So,
not. Yeah.
just because everyone's getting on whatever train it is, does not mean that you also need to get on that train.
Yep.
Especially when
Yep.
it comes to running and just your overall well-being, your physical well-being. And so wear the shoes that work for you.
Yep.
And then also get socks, moisture wicking socks specifically. So features are great. Belega is great. There are some other cheaper options out there, but you just want to make sure that you look at the materials that they're made out of. Make sure that they're moisture wicking. So it's a lot of like polyester nylon blends. Done a lot of research.
Yeah.
And
It's great.
then other thing, first time marathoners, you don't have to do the fancy goos and shoes. Like if you want to just do nerd clusters, I did dried mango and dried fruit all the time. Like
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
that's
that crazy.
fine. Save money. Like you don't need to get and try all of the like fancy gels. And
Definitely not.
that's not, no, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Um next thing, if you have the resources financially, I would advise that you invest or purchase a running plan from a running coach. So whether it's like a one-time constellation, they come up with a running plan for you, great. Do that. Um there are a lot of free sources out there, but I would definitely advise someone, or I would advise you, if you have the financial means, to talk with a running certified coach. I think looking back on that, I would have invested in that, even if it was a one off. Like, just come up with a plan for me, I'll figure out the
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have saved a lot of just trouble that I
Yeah.
experienced instead of just
Yeah.
like winging it the way I did.
Give you a little confidence too if you're getting it from
Exactly.
somebody who knows what they're doing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know, I think, and the last thing is just understand your why. Like, you know, when you decide to sign up for a marathon, you need to have something that you can always turn back to, especially when it gets hard, when training is so confusing and unbearable and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, find your motivation and your reason and write that down. Like, have that in the back of your mind. Or like, what I did, I had a voice memo of myself. Like, if things got tough and like it was just me talking to myself, like, Mackenzie, do not stop now. Like, this is why you're running. And
Yeah.
it truly makes a difference, because we're all running for a certain reason, and to have that and hold that close to your heart is so, so important. And honestly, just have fun. Like, enjoy the process, enjoy what you learn about yourself and about, running as a whole, and get more caught up in the goodness rather than like the hard.
Totally. Yeah. Focus on
So,
the feeling you feel when you finish the run and shoot for that.
exactly. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hopefully this doesn't contradict everything that you just said, but for you specifically, what fuel would you recommend
Oh
starting
yeah.
out? So you said mangoes, dried mangoes is kind of what you went for. Were there any that you developed later on in your running career that you really liked as well?
Yeah, so dried mangoes specifically from Trader Joe's, very good. I also did like dried apples.
Mm-hmm.
They have like a chewy option rather than like the crispy options that were really
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
I did gummy bears for a good bit.
It's a good one.
And now that I've tried some other fuels and stuff. I love if you want to try running fuels, and invest some more money in that. Scratch Labs,
Hmm.
their chews, specifically the raspberry flavor, is very good. Um, and then Spring energy gels, mostly just because like it has an apple. Oh, I did go-go squeezes a lot for a really long time. I still
Oh,
do that.
really?
Oh yeah, I looked like a 3-year-old when I was running out there, but like go-go
Yeah.
squeezes are legit, you
I mean,
guys.
they're
Like,
kind of the same thing, right? Like,
oh,
you're
they are.
still, yeah, you'd still take it the same way you would like just
Yeah,
a regular gel or something like that
exactly.
on a
And
run.
it's
Yeah.
significantly cheaper. Like
Oh, for
applesauce,
sure.
honestly,
Costco,
like
get a huge
yes.
box.
Cause I like I'm the all the goos and stuff, like my belly does not sit well with those. And
No.
so
Yeah,
like
I agree.
I had to do some just like actual normal food. So applesauce is a big one for me. I still do that. Go-go squeeze is the best. They just are bulky. So um
Sure.
and but spring, if you want a little higher energy, spring gels are good. They have this exact same consistency as the awesome sauce flavor. I don't like any of the other flavors. I think they're
Yeah.
garbage, but LOL. But the awesome sauce flavor is really good. And but they are a little pricey.
Yeah.
And then I've been recently getting into
Oh, yeah,
Huma,
yeah, I've tried them. Yeah.
the
I
chia
definitely feel
seed
like you have to take
ones.
them with a lot of water, but I do like the flavors.
Yes. Yeah. The mango flavor specifically tastes exactly like the mango strips from Trader Joe's. That's why I like it.
It's
But
all
it's not
coming
for
back to
everyone.
the
Yeah.
dried fruit. I think maybe
Yeah.
you should stick with what what you love.
And nerd clusters. I mean, that's just like a given. I haven't done those
Yeah.
in a while, but they're really
But in the
good.
beginning, like any sort of gummy candy like that is definitely
Yeah.
a more inexpensive option for sure.
Yeah. I sometimes have to be careful with that kind of stuff though, because my teeth feel like they're gonna like fall out of my
Oh,
gums when I
yeah.
have like that much like sugary candy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Um, but yeah, those are my go-to
Cool.
gels. Hmm.
Cool. What shoes did you start off with? That and then
Ooh,
slash what shoes do you really, really love now?
oh, great question. But also disclaimer, please go try on your
Please
shoe.
go to Fleet Feet or wherever you want to
Yes,
go
yeah,
and get your feet measured for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Uh, the first shoe I got fitted in, and the one that like I would still wear if like I wanted to, is the Brooks Ghost. I feel like that's like
mhm,
the standard, like a lot of people get suggested the Brooks Ghost, and they're just a great shoe overall.
definitely. Yeah.
Um and yeah, I like them. I mean, I ran my first marathon in them. And then I went to another running store when I was traveling for work, and I was like, oh, I'll just go through y'all's fit process, see what you guys recommend. And they recommended Brooks Ghost, but then they also recommended the Saucony rides. So I ran in those for a bit for Chicago. And then I just now am getting into the Saucony glides.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
yeah, and I'm obsessed with the Saucony glides. The I was in the Ride 16s for a little bit, and then they just got the Ride 17s. I don't like the Ride 17s. I think they're garbage.
Mm.
Might be controversial, but LOL,
No,
I
sorry.
don't
I
care.
feel like Saucony's a little bit like that, where like
Yeah.
some of them I really, really love, and then some of them they'll come out
Yeah,
with a newer version. I'm like, oh, I think I'm gonna stick with the older ones.
yeah,
Same thing with Brooks too. Like that's
mhm.
happened to me with Brooks too.
Yeah, and it's not like that they're garbage. It's more just like the way, like it's just a little like I don't know, like clunkier for me, like the
Sure, sure.
17s over the 16s. But again, I don't really know a lot about technology, so if there's anyone that works from Saucony that's listening to this, sorry.
Sorry. Reach out. You
uh,
can change my mind.
but the glides are where it's at. I love those glides. Those things are so comfortable and like
Yeah.
have really just changed my game in terms of running.
Cool.
But yeah, those are the shoes now.
Cool.
So
Cool.
yeah, slay.
Uh, well, last couple of questions are just what is coming up next for you? Do you have any races on the calendar? Anything with the run club that's coming up? What is next for you?
Yeah, so I'll be running the Nashville Rock and Roll half marathon at the end of
Sweet.
April. So pumped. I love Nashville. I haven't been
I've
there in
heard
a
good things
minute.
about that one. I wanna make my way out there
Yeah,
at some
I've
point.
never done a rock and roll race, so we'll see how it goes. But
Yeah.
super pumped with that. I'll be running with one of my followers for a giveaway I did for TikTok when I hit 10K on TikTok.
That's
and this
awesome.
the winner was like a free race entry fee, and then also I'll run it with you. And so that was the choice that she
So
chose.
cool. That was a great
Yeah.
idea.
So I'm so pumped to meet her in person and just have a good time and listen to some good music on the route and
Yeah.
in Nashville. And then after that, I'll be headed to Montana for the Glacier half marathon with my
Cool.
longtime best friend. It'll be her first half marathon, so I'll be running that with her. Um, and then
I bet that's gonna
Chicago.
be beautiful.
Yeah,
The
yeah, it's
Montana
gonna.
one.
I'm
Yeah.
excited.
And
And
then
then
the big
Chicago
one. And then
in
Chicago. So what
October.
in October. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then another fun little race in November that has yet to be announced. So
Cool. Cool. Well,
yeah.
lots coming up. You've got like your full year planned out already for races.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's some spontaneity in there. Sometimes people are
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Hey, you want to do this?" And I'm like, "I probably shouldn't, but yeah, why not?"
Yeah, I feel like once you like have a good base for running, anytime somebody
Yeah.
reaches out to me and asks if I want to run something, as long as I don't have to take a flight there, I'm like, yeah, 100%. Just send me the link.
Yes.
I'm already there.
Yeah. Yeah. We work it
Uh,
into the budget.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we talked a lot about your social media, but where can we find you on social media? And if there's anything else you want to plug?
Yeah. I am on TikTok. The handle is, oh gosh, my name Mackenzie.Rink, but just look up the realistic runner, it should pop up. And then Instagram, it's the realistic runner. So that's it. That's all I got for you.
Perfect. No, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I
Yeah.
knew a little bit of your story from social media, but it was great to talk through kind of beginning to marathon to
Yeah.
what you've got coming up next. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Taylor. This is
Y-
awesome. I love it. I
Yeah, of
can't wait
course.
to listen to more of your episodes. I've listened to
Well, now that we're both in North Carolina, we'll have to find some time to
Oh
run
yeah,
together
we
soon.
will. We will.
Cool.
We will, for sure.
All right. Thank you again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.